Former Director of National Intelligence under the Trump administration, John Ratcliffe, has unambiguously suggested that aliens are engaging our planet. If you think I'm being hyperbolic, I'm here to prove you unequivocally wrong. I've poured over several interviews he's done. The most recent dropped on July 28th, just days ago. And in this one, he was asked about the recent UFO hearing conducted by the House Subcommittee on National Security. In this interview, he strongly implies that we're not alone in the universe and that our planet is being engaged by non-human intelligence. I'm going to go through the aforementioned interviews, starting with the most recent, and I will provide my commentary as we go. When you really think about it, especially in light of UFO whistleblower David Grush's recent testimony, this is downright bonkers. You know what I'm saying?
John, you and I have spoken about this in the past. This is pretty extraordinary stuff. Unidentified flying objects have been seen. Biologics have shown non-human body parts, and people may have been murdered because they tried to hide this. What can you tell us as the former Director of National Intelligence?
Well, Maria, you and I had a conversation more than 2 years ago about this as I left my position as the Director of National Intelligence. And I said, look, the government has more information than it's sharing.
So right off the bat, Maria Bartiromo sets John Ratcliffe up with some of the assertions that UFO whistleblower David Grush made. And in his response, he doesn't even flirt with pronouncing those statements as false, which is pretty strange if you think about it. I mean, if I was the former DNI and she set me up like that and I knew they were false, I'd be like, well, here's what I want to say, but let me reject some of those statements that David Grush made. That didn't happen, which is right off the bat kind of strange, at least to me.
I believe there should be more transparency on this issue, but not full transparency. I mean, the primary role of the federal government is to provide for the common defense. And, you know, we don't share all national security information with the American people, but the government should have done a better job of putting out some of the things that you and I talked about, that I said, look, there are things that we can't explain, and that there are more sightings than are being reported. And, you know, had the government managed this a little bit better, it wouldn't be as controversial.
So my intuition, which is obviously not predictive of the truth necessarily, but it's that John Ratcliffe, when he says he doesn't want to have full transparency, he's basically saying, I would like for the Department of Defense to communicate to the American and world public that there are technologies out there that we simply cannot replicate nor defend against, which is something John Ratcliffe has stated. But that language hasn't to date made it into any of the public UFO reports that we've been given in an explicit way that's not given all these caveats like, well, it could be a glitch and it could be XYZ, which I think is not necessarily true. If you read those reports, it's been stated before that it comes off as factions warring against each other, and that equation ultimately manifesting in the report, which makes it so wishy-washy in some real sense. But putting that aside, I think it's vital that we learn more than just what has been scientifically proven regarding the capabilities of these unknown technologies. I believe the American and world public have a need to know of the absolute fundamentals of what's been learned. So what do I mean by fundamentals? Like fundamentals in terms of have materials been recovered, have intact craft been recovered, have non-human biologics been recovered. I think it's absolutely essential we learn this if such intimate knowledge of this phenomena has been garnered. Now, where I would probably agree with former DNI John Ratcliffe, assuming he disagrees with me, is that whatever technological understanding has been gained through trying to exploit this technology through study, yes, of course, classify that. Of course, don't share that with the public, because what you share with your friends, you also share with your enemies. But keeping from all 8 billion of us the fact that you have acquired artifacts from another civilization or multiple civilizations and including biological remains. No, there's no justification. You cannot stop at, we see these things, they're recorded on multiple sensors, so we know their capabilities and they're a great mystery. You cannot stop at that. You have to tell us if you've recovered craft. You have to tell us if you've recovered non-human biologics. It has to get to that point in a free society for the sake of us not being in the dark about our place in the universe, and all of our great sciences, soft and hard, having a new perspective of reality, because that's the truth. We don't want to be ignorant of the truth.
The fact of the matter is, some of the technologies that have been talked about and explained are beyond our capabilities, and we believe our adversaries, China and Russia.
Now, let's be clear. When he says that some of the technologies that have been talked about and explained are more sophisticated than anything in the American military inventory and believed to exist in any adversarial inventory, he knows more than what's been explained or talked about. He's already stated that he's seen satellite imagery, and he's gone into what that leads him to assess about the phenomena, and he's also cited how in measuring this phenomena, multiple sensors have done it. So we have a very scientific analysis of its capabilities because of the corroboration. But we'll explore that further in some of the older interviews.
And there are technologies that we don't have, and frankly, that we're not capable of defending against based on those things that we've seen, multiple sensors. In other words, where not just people visually see it, but where it's picked up on radar, where it's seen on satellites.
The theme I see threaded throughout the segments of the 3 interviews I'm sharing with you right now is that former DNI John Ratcliffe is essentially communicating that it's aliens without saying it's aliens. And further, notice that in that previous clip, he spoke about satellites. This will get more important, and I will drive this home further as we progress in this video. That clip originally aired shortly after the first public UFO report dropped, which happened in June 25th, 2021.
When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom.
In the previous clip, John Ratcliffe was on Maria Bartiromo's show right before the June 25th UFO report got released.
We need to find out when there are, and there very clearly are now, hundreds of unexplained sightings, meaning that there's no natural phenomenon involved, there's no visual disturbance, it's not clutter or debris or birds or anything else, but objects that demonstrate technologies that seem to defy the law of physics and capabilities that we don't have as the world's superpower. Our role in the federal government is to provide for the common defense, and we can't do that if someone else has technologies that are better than we have.
Okay, so that was actually from a 4th interview. This interview took place on Fox and Friends in January of 2023, and he just further supports my contention that I made at the beginning of this video that John Ratcliffe, the former director of national intelligence, has openly and unambiguously communicated that some of these UAP are behaving in ways we can't replicate, we can't duplicate, we don't understand, we could not defend against, that break the sound barrier, but there's no sonic boom, that have been recorded via satellite and other multiple sensors simultaneously, so we know that it's not a glitch, and so forth. He has been very unambiguously clear about the nature of UAP, and as I said in the beginning, he has strongly suggested that UAP are not stemming from human civilization. So on May 2nd, 2023, James Fox was on the Breaking Points YouTube channel, and he goes into the exceedingly high fidelity satellite photography that Chris Mellon purports to have seen. In my most recent video, I shared with you what James Fox said on a recent Joe Rogan show. But now I'm going to share with you what he said on a Breaking Points show, which will set me up for an actual clip with Chris Mellon talking about what I think is satellite UFO imagery.
I just talked to Christopher Mellon, who's also got clearances, who's seen the satellite data, photographic evidence. And he said, well, I'm only talking about it because Ratcliffe talked about it. But I'll tell you right now, it's amazing. And I said, Christopher, please, because I'm friends with Christopher. Can you give me a little more? He's like, well, if you imagine like full 4K of craft, it's about as good as that. And it's just behind that level of secrecy. So it's only a matter of time where some of that stuff's coming out. I'm very confident. It's just a matter of when.
So let me set you up for the Chris Mellon clip, which is quite interesting. On July 31st, James Fox dropped the tweet, and I quote, at Chris Mellon, talking about photographic UFO UAP evidence that has yet to be released. This is what Congress needs to obtain and share with us. And then he follows up. I filmed several others who've also seen the evidence, but aren't quite ready to go public. I know some of you will criticize the lack of said evidence, but how are we to go after something we didn't know existed?
And you've seen some pretty compelling photographic evidence.
And I've seen some very compelling evidence that I very much wish was in the public domain. When I'm talking to the scientists at the Galileo Project, for example, and at the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, I so wish that they were privy to this information and the public was privy to this information.
What happened when you looked at those photographs? Come on, put me there.
Well, it's like
I want to be you for a minute.
it's like, wow, like I can't think of any way to explain this other than, this is not something in our inventory, I'm pretty sure.
After he dropped that clip of Mellon, some people followed up with questions. Here's one. Why would Chris have access but not Congress? James Fox responds. Has clearance and knows where to look. But from my understanding, some of these members of Congress within these national security committees have the requisite clearances to gain access to this satellite data, but yet the intelligence agencies are still not giving it to them. How Chris Mellon was able to do so, I don't know, but he's been around a very long time. He has an exceedingly illustrious career in the Pentagon, knows a lot of people. Somehow he gained access. But it's very clear that the intelligence agencies are not cooperating. And as far as I know, no members of Congress have seen this satellite data. I've already gone over why I think that is. And I just think it's primarily because it doesn't make them look good. It makes them look like they've been engaging in a cover-up and that they've known all along that these craft are not coming from human civilization. I assess Congress already feels that way, but if they were to see this satellite data, they would feel that way even more. And what it basically comes down to is people working in the intelligence agencies don't want to indict themselves and they don't want to make it any more obvious how much of a breach of their responsibilities they've engaged in when in terms of informing oversight committees about this phenomenon. In that light, on July 31st, an article dropped in WSKG titled, "Gillibrand calls for more information on UFOs following whistleblower testimony." And here's a quote. Gillibrand said the Defense Department hasn't responded to her requests for more information, and she doesn't know why. "I don't know," Gillibrand said. "I don't know why. I don't know if it doesn't exist. I don't know if we're not asking the right questions. I don't know. I just know I have nothing to confirm those allegations." So Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has asked for verification of whistleblower David Grush's claims, and they're not responding. That's a pretty good way to give the impression there's a cover-up. In the vein of a lack of transparency and giving the impression that there is a cover-up, News Nation recently dropped an article titled "Ex-Navy Pilot Influx of People Coming Forward Since UFO Hearing." And here's an excerpt from Ross Coulthart. "Frankly, one of the issues at the moment is that the Pentagon's UFO UAP investigation office, AARO, is sending out a shocking signal. It doesn't have a phone number, it doesn't have an email address, it doesn't even have a website, and its Twitter page hasn't posted a tweet since the very first tweet it posted last year," Coulthart said. He added, "If this truly is an agency inside the Pentagon that's seriously interested in proactively investigating and hearing from witnesses, it's not sending that message out. I'm at a dilemma at the moment. Where do I send these poor people I'm encouraging to consider going forward?" One of the things that James Fox said in that Breaking Points interview is that providing this level of fidelity satellite photography to Congress, there's nothing in it for the intelligence agencies to do so. And that makes sense. They don't know where they're coming from. They don't know who the pilots are or who their controllers are. They don't have a lot of answers. And furthermore, by sharing that data, it would indict them for the charge that for decades they have been intentionally withholding high fidelity data on this enigma from oversight committees within the Congress. So and there might be some illegality threaded through that. And so it's not a big surprise that the intelligence agencies are so reluctant to give information to Congress. And ironically, by them persisting to stonewall Congress and to deny Congress information and data, it only adds fuel to the perception of the public that there's a cover-up. And that's the thing, isn't it? Because there is a cover-up, it looks like. It looks like there is a cover-up. But you don't solve the problem by persisting with the cover-up in face of congressional pressure. At that point, right, when you get to the point where the Congress is pressuring you to give up the data and you have whistleblowers coming forward testifying under oath about the reality of the situation, at that point, you don't continue to persist with the cover-up. It's bad for the country. When will they understand this? I don't know. And another thing that James Fox said that I found interesting in that Breaking Points interview is he said, there's amazing photographic evidence just behind that wall. And what is he referencing by that wall? I think he's referencing once you have the requisite security clearance and eligibility and need to know, because I'm not quite sure how it works. Having the security clearance alone may not be enough, but once you're in a place to see that data, then it becomes very, very compelling, far more compelling than we're led on to believe, frankly, and that we've been led on to believe for decades. But one of the things that I've been thinking about is if the former DNI under the Trump administration, John Ratcliffe, had this kind of access to this kind of data, and let's assume this kind of data reflects what Chris Mellon has said, 4K satellite imagery that's as good as you can imagine. At least James Fox said he said this, and that clip that I shared with you seems to be in that kind of frame. And by the way, that clip from James Fox is a clip that's going to be in his upcoming movie. And his upcoming movie is investigating how much does the government know about this topic, where is the highest fidelity data stored, and who has the authority to release it, right? So that's the genre of his next documentary. And he's been spending a lot of time in Washington interviewing people. And he even said, maybe it was Twitter, that Chris Mellon is not the only person to have gone on record to say that this data exists. Other officials have gone on record, but at this moment in time, they don't want to come publicly forward. But I imagine that when he releases his documentary, we'll start seeing all the other people that have corroborated this. This policy of secrecy that has persisted for so many decades, it is crumbling under the pressure of whistleblowers, government officials coming forward and corroborating the testimony of whistleblowers, as well as the United States Congress pushing back against the withholding of data on this enigma. So I don't see this cover-up persisting much longer. I don't think it can handle the stress and the pressure that it is under right now. And furthermore, my understanding is we're going to get more hearings in September. And we're going to continue to get more hearings. And we're going to get more whistleblowers, people of the highest credentials and credibility, all corroborating the same theme, which is that there are unknown technologies out there that don't stem from human civilization. We have corroborative scientific forensic proof of its existence, and the U.S. government has been leading the public astray on that reality. That is the theme, in my opinion, that is going to continue to flourish in the zeitgeist because it is reflective of ground truth, in my opinion. And if former DNI John Ratcliffe had access to all this data, then my question is, what about the current director of national intelligence, Avril Haines? And here's the last thing I want to leave you with, which is something that makes me scratch my head. If indeed, if you have a high enough security clearance, you can get read into this reality of high fidelity data, crash retrieval programs, other various programs. In other words, being given a so-called bird's eye view of how the government is handling this topic and what they know. If all you need is a particular security clearance and maybe other factors, but let's assume a lot of people fulfill that, then why doesn't the current DNI, Avril Haines, come out and say, there's truth to the allegations of Dave Grush? Or she could just say, yes, we have much better data. I want to be transparent. I don't know why we're not sharing this with the Congress. I will do my part to get them to share this with the Congress. Like, that could cause a domino effect where the government finally comes clean, right? But instead, it looks like we're going to go in another trajectory. Someone like Avril Haines is not going to make those admissions, but we're just going to have a circus of hearings with whistleblowers that's finally going to pressure the U.S. government for admissions. Why they wouldn't admit first and preclude those hearings, I don't know. But then again, maybe those hearings will happen no matter what because the Congress is fed up. I don't know, right? Maybe the Congress is like, no, we want the hearings. We want to hear from firsthand witnesses whether the U.S. government makes the admissions they should have decades ago or not. But I do I'm not saying I expect. I do think if DNI Avril Haines knows a lot more about the topic, it would seem that she should be, she should take it upon herself to communicate that in some way to the American public, right? I think more government officials that have these high security clearances and know more about this topic than the government is willing to admit, these people should probably go public and do their part to just stop this nonsense. But that's just my opinion. Please do not forget to subscribe. And you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You could become a patron. You could become a YouTube member. All those possibilities can be accessed in the description below, or you could just slap a like on this bad boy and I'll appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.